greetings and salutations to the 310 tribe, wherever you may be. And let me get the first person on here tonight was Vex VR. Congratulations for being number one tonight. I try to get on people's feed. They'll be like the first one on there to post something. So, well, hello to everybody. You got Kathy, Lisa, Hannah Lore, Pamela Minnick, Coco Bear, Jackie Christ, my mom. Hey, mom. Catalyn, Michelle S. Craig and Barb. Who else we got here? Armand. And that's a lot of people. Sir Pierce Savale is on with us tonight. Well, hey, good to see everybody tonight. If you guys can hear me and see me, give me a thumbs up. Let's see how I can do this. Got one thumbs up. No. Words are loose. All right, got some thumbs up. Good to go. All right. Well, I think I just lost a screen. Uh-oh. Never fails. Tech difficulties. Well, all right. Um, easy fix, easy fix. Well, good. Well, hey, if you guys like the Saturday night program where I'm, talking about kind of everyday life stuff, with more pragmatism and less prophecy, but still prophecy is there. It's present. It's in the background. It colors everything we do. If you guys like that, let me know on that. If I can get like, I'm trying to think of a good metric. I don't even know what a good metric is. Uh, I don't even know how many likes are on it. I can get 100 more likes on it. Let's see. It's at, it says 10,000. I don't know. Or that's views. Sorry. I got 1,000 likes on it. If I can get I don't even know if it would show it. Maybe like 1,100 likes. I don't know. It just says 1,000. I don't know if that rounds it up, rounds it down. How does it do that? But yeah, whatever. Hit it up. I'll think about adding the Saturday night to the regular rotunda. All right. Well, today is 0 hour, excuse me, 0 day exploits. Exploits. I was thinking 0 hour for some reason. And let me see here. A 0 day is it's a vulnerability flaw. It's like a flaw in a system that nobody knew was there, and somebody is exploiting that system. And when they take advantage of it, they only get one shot to take advantage of it because as soon as you act on it, obviously the people that have that system are going to work to prevent that. So the exploitation of something that you didn't know was there or didn't know was not there. Um, it can also mean the first day of a coordinated attack. So when we think back to World War II and we think of D-Day, well, as you know, we look back on it now historically, and it's all open secret. You know, it's all out in the open. We kind of know that the hour by hour play and all that. But prior to that, that was a closely, tightly, on pain of death, held secret that nobody could know, right? And so you are using code to kind of talk about where you are, but that day, the day that you actually initiate that attack, that's your 0 day. So, anyways, I'm looking at this more from the cyber perspective. And I wrote an article today. It's on my website called the 0 Day Exploit. So I really wanted to talk through that. I'm going to read some of what I wrote here. As man has progressed through the industrial revolutions, the method of warfare has become increasingly lethal. Mankind reached the pinnacle of his lethality in the middle of the 20th century with the Manhattan Project. However, as mankind has entered both the information and now the cyber age, the potential for existential threats has grown, not lessened. And in the digital age, traditional warfare, i.e., nuclear weapons, armies, ballistic missiles, etc., is no longer the greatest threat to American sovereignty. The greatest threat would be a coordinated multi-domain attack that never fired a single bullet, but managed to destroy a significant portion of the American infrastructure. And by that, I mean, by destroy a significant portion, I mean, you would basically see the collapse of the United States as we know it. Now, 0 day exploits represent one of the most formidable challenges in cybersecurity due to their inherent, quote, black swan nature, i.e., we don't know what we don't know. These vulnerabilities unknown to software vendors and developers at the time of the creation offer no time for mitigation once discovered and can bypass even the most robust security measures. Their potential to cause widespread disruption is exemplified by incidents like the Stuxnet worm, which leveraged multiple 0 day exploits to disrupt Iran's nuclear facilities, and also the WannaCry ransomware attack, which exploited an undisclosed flaw in Microsoft Windows to inflict global damage. But two of the ones I wanted to kind of focus in on tonight was Stuxnet and Nitrous Zeus. And I'll give a personal story with regard to Stuxnet because I didn't know it at the time, but none of us knew it at the time. But in 2008, this was in I want to say May, June timeframe of 2008. I was in Afghanistan and I was in Bagram working it was a morning shift, but I was finishing up from the night. So I had, for about 7 or 8 months straight, I did a midnight shift there for 10 hours. You'd work, or 12 hours. I worked from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. for like 7 days, 7 months straight. I had like, I think 2 days off the entire time. And I was a zombie at the end of that tour. But the point I'm getting to is that around the middle point of that, um, everything that we had used in our talk, which is our tactical operations center, we had laptops, we had screens, multiple TV screens up because we were looking at operations from around Afghanistan, and you had all the drone footage and all the camera footage from anything that was being filmed. We were watching it, and we were the only aviation brigade in theater, so we had helicopters all over the country, even though we weren't officially all over the country. And I remember that morning, the S3 came in. He's the operations officer, so he's like the third in command, or maybe the fourth in command. He came in and said, "Hey, no more thumb drives. Nobody can use thumb drives." He goes, "If you have a thumb drive, if you put it in a laptop, you're going to be written up and you're going to go get UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice." Like it was like a big thing. Like, so everybody was terrified of plugging anything into the laptops, even the power cord, like, so everything kind of came to a grinding halt. Um, it's I can't explain how disruptive this was. Um, we live in a this environment where everything is driven on laptops, and you're using your laptops to transfer information many, many times a day on many different platforms, and a thumb drive was the perfect, um, widget that fixed all of those gaps. And so for then on to not be able to use a thumb drive and have to now either email that data to somebody, or you had to put it on some type of a shared drive, or you had to burn it to a CD. I mean, it was we were going like imagine going like on a highway, you're just cruising along 90 miles per hour, and then all of a sudden there's like construction, everything comes to a grinding halt, and you're going like 15 miles an hour. That's exactly what it felt like when this thumb drive ban came out. And at the time, they had told us that they had found a bunch of thumb drives in the bazaar, which is those little markets they would set up outside of the gate. And so somehow these thumb drives, which had military data on them and stuff, was ending up in these bazaars, and they were selling them back to us. However they got them, I don't know, but they were selling them back. So the MI guys were just going out there and buying them all up. But everybody had a thumb drive or an external hard drive of some kind, and now you cannot plug that into the system at all anymore. And it was really like just, I mean, but anyways, come to find out, like a year and a half later, is when Stuxnet broke. That's the whole story broke. And it was around the same time I'm in Afghanistan that the operation was really like kicking into gear and was made known to like the lower echelons in the Department of Defense. So they could warn, it was done for our protection so that we didn't get Stuxnet on our systems because they were spreading it to Iran, and Iran's right next to Afghanistan. And so they were afraid that there would be like cross contamination. And so it was just, I mean, but anyways, that's my connection to Stuxnet. That my little story with Stuxnet and how painful that whole um, scenario played out. It was just like one of those things that I didn't understand at the time, but when you're looking back on it, you're like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." And that's why they were so anal about not letting anybody use a thumb drive about it, anywhere. I mean, it was a big deal. Okay, so another thing about 0 day is, this idea that you don't know what you don't know. And, if you remember back several decades now to Donald Rumsfeld, his speech. This was like in 2007 or whatever. And he was talking about the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. So the known knowns are like the things you know. Like let's say that you have a neighbor, and that neighbor has a German Shepherd, which is not maybe not that friendly. But you know about that dog. You know to beware, to be looking for it when you go outside. That's a threat that you know about. A known unknown is that that you live in a neighborhood that has houses and there's a lot of dogs. And there's always that potential that one of those dogs can get out and could attack you or could come kill your chickens or whatever the case is. So that's a known unknown. There's a threat, you just don't know where it's going to come from. And then the unknown unknown is the thing that you never saw coming. And that's that Tyrannosaurus Rex that comes crashing out of the woods and smashes through your backyard, smashes through your house, then goes on a rampage through the city. That I know that sounds ridiculous, but like that's like really how preposterous a unknown unknown is. You just never saw it coming. It's something so far out of field that you just don't know what to make of it. Um, Chihuahuas. Yep, dude, Chihuahuas are mean. Okay. So Stuxnet was a highly advanced computer worm discovered in 2010. It was believed to be created by the US and Israel as part of Operation Olympic Games. It targeted Iran's Natanz nuclear facility by exploiting a zero-day Windows vulnerability to sabotage uranium enriching centrifuges, all while masking its activity. Its discovery marked a turning point in cyber warfare, showcasing the potential to inflict physical damage via digital means, sparking a global debate about the ethics of cyber weapons. And surely, we've seen what happens. We've seen how creative the Israelis could be when they have to be, with regard to the pagers and Lebanon and that whole thing. uh, but this was kind of the first um, mind blowing, like, wow, I can't believe they did that. Military operation in, you know, I don't even know since when. And then, so you think about how mind blowing that operation was with Stuxnet. You take that to the nth degree, then you have the pagers thing, and there's still going to be more and more things that come out in the future with regard to Israel and their miraculous victories and their miraculous, successes that they have in defending themselves. It's going to come to light, and it's going to just keep blowing our mind. But so that was Stuxnet, and it did set Iran back quite a few years. It did a number on all of their. It basically tricked all their machinery into malfunctioning and operating so hot that they malfunctioned, and it just really messed them up and set the Iranians back quite a few years. The next thing is called Nitro Zeus, probably a little less known. This was a covert U.S. cyber warfare program developed under the Obama administration as a contingency against Iran. It aimed to disable Iran's air defenses and critical air infrastructure through a pre-installed malware, offering a non-lethal alternative to traditional warfare. An extension of the strategies used in Stuxnet, the program involved thousands of operatives and significant funding. And its 2016 disclosure highlighted growing concerns about cyber warfare's legality and ethical boundaries. I don't know if Nitro Zeus, what effect it had. I haven't not been able to find a whole lot about it, but another uh, example of using the system against the system, so to speak. So the reason why that it's significant here, even though either of those instances there wasn't a high body count or anything like that, was the not just the damage that they inflicted. Oh, thank you, Pamela. Appreciate you. It's not just the damage they inflicted, but the potential that it represented, a potential to uh, bring in some type of crippling action against a nation or against like their infrastructure, whether it's the power grid or their water systems, drinking water systems, nuclear power plants, all manner of things. And so it represents a very frightening scenario. And in the recent, I say recent, within the last couple of years, Netflix's movie, Leave the World Behind, it was a play on this fear. And in the show, you see a number of different things playing out, of which it seems to be some type of massive cyber attack, and then some type of violent actions or sleeper cells going on in different places. And the biggest thing that, whatever you thought about the show or not, I'm not endorsing it or anything like that. But the biggest takeaway from it was just the miscommunication and how everything shuts down, and how information um, goes from being readily accessible anywhere to now not being able to know anything. And I think that was probably the most disturbing aspect of the show. But nevertheless, it did present a scenario about multiple things happening, and kind of parroting what Klaus Schwab in the World Economic Forum was using as their um, thesis for the year, so to speak, is this idea of polycrisis. multiple crises happening, and so that show was a perfect example of a polycrisis. Um, and the fact that there's no real clear enemy given, no clear end, victory, whatever. It's just, kind of leaves you hanging. But that's the part of it. That's the point of it, I guess, too, is that it just presents confusion, that you're left in a state of confusion. Now, with the convergence of everything these days digitally, I mean, you're bringing everything in digitally, whether it's the financial sectors, the economic sectors, the utility sectors, entertainment, academia, government, private businesses, non-governmental organizations, everything is going online. Um, you can see the amount of vulnerabilities e- ex what's the word, exponentially growing in a orders of magnitude that we don't even appreciate right now. Hey, thank you, Martha. I appreciate you. And so it, here's an example, and not a very well thought out example yet either. But like if you had a software program that was slipped into an app, maybe it provides a geographic data, maybe it provides some user information, those things that usually are involved with cookies. And this thing had some type of very corrosive malware in it, and it is easily hidden in the background of dozens of different things that you see on your website any given moment of the day. It's that innocuous. And a 0 day would be to take that code, whatever that thing is. Somebody would look to exploit that because nobody's ever thought to exploit it before. And maybe it's your trash can recycling symbol. It's something embedded with the symbol itself. You know what? But that thing is in every computer. That little trash can's in every computer. I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but like, you know what I mean? Like something that would just be in everything. Something like that could be exploited, and especially, I don't think we've even. uh, I think, and I'll get to this at the end of this discussion tonight, but I think that the potential for like a cyber Armageddon to happen is very, very real. And I don't know how to describe it better than that, but it's basically everything going wrong that could go wrong digitally. And from the traffic lights to machinery, heavy equipment machinery that maybe runs semi-autonomously, to factories and robotics inside of those factories, to warehouses, stores, your software system when you boot up. I mean, it could be something, across all those fronts that shuts everything down. And then on top of that, so everything that then shuts down, and then the fun really begins, because that's where things start going sideways very, very quickly. And I think that our society is like a hair's way from falling apart on any given day. You know, one little thing could set off just a chain reaction. There's that much pent up frustration in the air. So let's consider this. And I looked at this from kind of a logical standpoint. If this were to happen, what order would it happen? And how would exactly would this thing play out? So you would have the first cyber warfare breach. It's number one. And in this is the really like malevolent part of it. We think about um, within like counterterrorism and things like that, in the counter intel world. You talk about things like sleeper cells. You have these groups of people that are ideologically or have some type of religious bent that they are committed to acts of terrorism going forward, right? those are sleeper cells. Well, this is like imagine these sleeper cells inside of all of our digital systems that are just waiting to be activated or inactivated or shut down or turned off or turned on or whatever it is that they need to do that is opposite of what's making everything run now. Um, there's that thing that happens. That thing shuts down, and it may be that it begins to have this domino effect, in that most of the American public don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. And when I was writing this and thinking about this, it reminded me of Belshazzar in the night that he is using the items from the temple inside of his lavish Babylonian party, and then he sees the finger writing on the wall, and then he just, he loses it literally. Um, but then, Daniel comes in, he's brought in to explain everything to everybody. But that very night, the Persians had diverted the water and had already come in under the gate. And they were in the city for like 3 days before anybody even knew that they had been conquered. And that's the kind of the same thing I'm thinking here, is that there would be something in the system that could already be there right now. We just don't know about it yet. And it's just waiting. I don't know what the trigger event would be, but waiting for that switch to be flipped. And whatever that is, man, it just everything that is connected to online is then going sideways, right? So nothing's working. So the only things that are going to work are things that are still manual, things that are um, not connected online in any way, shape, or form. But most of most of everything that we have today is connected online. I don't know what the percentage is. I didn't have a chance to look it up before, but like how many cars now are connected to the internet? And you could imagine like every car after whatever year it was that they went digital, they were all connected. So I mean, you have to go back so many decades now to get a car that's not connected online. Analog. Thank you, Yvonne. I was thinking of that word. Okay, so then you're talking about anything that's saved to the cloud, anything that is connected to networks, shared drives, all of that stuff crashing. All that information is lost almost instantaneously. Um, and I know this just from personal experience here. We have a shared drive, and I was storing a lot of um, work that we'd done and stuff that had been saved on there. And I went in this morning to look for it. It was gone. And I was like, dude, who erased this folder, man? Like, anyways, it wasn't painful yet because it's only been a month and I haven't had a chance to store that much stuff on there, but it was for like everybody's use, everybody to use it. Okay, so that happens simultaneously to that, or maybe just prior to, you would see a massive selling off of US assets and stocks and bonds and things. I think they call that like what, a short sale. It says simultaneously, hostile financial actors execute a global economic attack using AI and high frequency trading. They initiate mass short selling of key American stocks and commodities, targeting companies tied to national security and public trust. They create cascading failures in automated trading company or trading systems, freezing markets, and emptying retirement accounts. And I say simultaneous too, but this could actually happen prior to the massive cyber attack. So they may make all these moves and then hide it with the cyber attack, or those two things may, kind of happen simultaneously. I really don't know. It may, unless if it's a coordinated attack where you have multiple entities and one entity is in charge of doing this and the other entity is in charge of doing this and yada yada yada. You could have that. And I can't think of another time in recent history where there's been that many people ready to sink in the United States. Like I think they're at that point now where they're ready to do it. And it's not for. I understand why Trump is doing the tariffs. I understand all that. I mean, it's been a terribly imbalanced for decades. and basically we bled the wealth of the United States off, um, for who knows what, endless wars and human trafficking and all the other junk that's going on. So I know why that it has to be done. Uh, and let's just say that we had another 30, 40, 50, 60 years left. We might actually live on to see the dividends of that payment made now. So I don't know. We obviously don't have that kind of time, but they don't know that, or they don't want to know that. So you have the financial targeted attacks at the same time. I don't think we're there yet with the financial attacks. I think there's going to be a time, and I may answer my own question here at the end, but let's just say that the rapture wasn't going to happen for another 40, 50, 60 years. Um, I think when the whole world gets to the point where they are ready to go to fully digital, central bank digital currencies, and should Trump or his holdout, Vance or whoever wins after him, should they continue those policies where the U.S. is not willing to go onto this system, then I could see them doing this targeted financial attack against us to collapse us, just to get us to that breaking point where we have no choice but to go onto that system. Okay, but neither here nor there. The next thing would be an EMP strike over strategic regions. You could either detonate one powerfully enough over the central part of the United States, and it would blanket out to both coasts, or you could do both coasts, one on each coast, targeting everything from the East Coast all the way to like Ohio, and then California to the Rockies, and maybe I don't know, maybe they do multiple ones, but it would be enough to where basically anything that's not hardened is going to get fried. And so there is that possibility, that all three of those things would take place kind of one after the other. And then the last one would be the sleeper cell insurgencies or domestic destabilization groups. And these just would be small groups of hostile actors that would initiate varying forms of sabotage campaigns across the U.S. And you would see this kind of in random cities, random places, random things targeted, bridges, dams, nuclear reactors, ports, fuel depots, other things that are like strategic choke points. Okay, so all of those are possibilities. Either any one of those individually happening, yes, it's possible, but all four of them happening too is also a possibility. And for the naysayers, the folks that say, "Oh, that could never happen," I mean, I have a quote for them, for the naysayers that say that this could never happen. Where are you? Let's see here. Here it is. I was like, man, I've lost it. I had so much stuff here saved. Okay, for those who think that this can't happen, listen to this. Consider the statement by General Sir Richard Sheriff, formerly NATO's second most senior military officer, at a debate about Russia. This is back in 2014. He said, "Everyone surely agrees that we would be ready to go to war to defend Britain's borders. Well, as a NATO member, Britain's borders are now in Latvia. Yet by June 28th, war moves straight from impossible to inevitable without ever passing through improbable. 4 years later, 10 million people had died." This was talking about the beginning of World War One, and how within just from June 28th to or from the weeks leading up to June 28th, nobody thought war was possible. I mean, nobody was. And just the most random series of events take place, and next thing you know, the world's at war. over an assassination of a Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. Um, I'm telling you, like one of the things that we don't think about is uh, what's the word? Demographics. And if you go back to the lead up of any of these major wars, whether World War I or World War II, you see that there's a massive surge in men in a general population. So, like in Japan, the male to female ratio was completely out of balance. I would assume the same thing in Germany and in many parts of Europe, where it was just much more economically viable to keep a boy or son rather than a daughter. Nevertheless, uh, Japan in particular, their demographic is interesting because of how isolated they are as a people group. But their male to female ratio is completely out of skew. So young men in that generation, let's just say out of 10 young men, only like two of them had a prospect of ever getting married and having children and having any kind of normal life. The other eight were just, there just wasn't enough women. Dude, China's in that problem right now. India's in that problem right now. I mean, there's many places around the world where there's way more men than there are women. And we are a world right now primed for World War III. And even Europe, I mean, think about Europe. Other than what's gone on with Ukraine over the last few years, Europe's not had a major land war since World War II. So 70 plus years. I mean, they've got a huge population in Europe. If you put them all together, I mean, they're like 500 plus million. The United States is only at like 350, I think, but they have a huge population, and they have a huge population of young people that are unemployed. And I don't know what the demographics are from men to women, but I would imagine it's somewhat askew, especially with all the Muslim immigration they've had pouring in there. So either way, I think we're at that generation where we're primed for major conflict. Now, is there anything the U.S. could do prior to that? Yeah, I put some recommendations on here, um, but I hate, when you go listening to certain people and they talk about a problem. Um, I'm thinking of certain individuals right now. I'm thinking of Annie something. She's really into like the nuclear weapons and like the history of the nuclear bomb and how all that tied in with Paperclip, Operation Paperclip, and she's done a lot of books like that. You listen to her, or you listen to a lot of different experts in particular fields. They always give you the kind of the world's falling apart scenario. They give you the greatest threat of whatever that thing is, and for some people, it's nuclear weapons. For some, it's artificial intelligence. For others, it's some type of biological, disease, or maybe it's artificial intelligence, or maybe it's whatever, you know. But they never look at it from the spiritual component either. They only give you like half the picture. And, I talk about this a lot, but, the military prides itself in being the master. The US military prides itself in being the master of every domain, whether it's land, sea, air, cyber, subterranean, space. I mean, cyberspace. Anything, any place you can be, they pride themselves in being the best. But one of the domains they absolutely refuse to talk about, Annie Jacobson, thank you, just Vicky, um, is the spiritual domain. And the spiritual domain is huge. I mean, it colors everything that we see and do and believe and understand. And yet it's the one thing we don't want to talk about. And so, because obviously it's not politically correct. But I'd be cruel if I simply left you here with the problem. And even if I gave you some recommendations, those really don't ease your conscience because what's the likelihood that people are actually going to follow through and do all this stuff? Very like unlikely. But here's my, and this is my opinion. And I want you guys to know that this is just how I see things. I surely come to your own conclusions on these things and prepare accordingly, right? This is just how I understand them. Um, there is a very real possibility that the United States is taken out before the tribulation, before the 70th week of Daniel. I tend to think that I don't believe that view, and I'll tell you why here in a second. But I tend to believe that what causes the downfall of the United States is not an EMP or a financial attack or any of those other things I just mentioned, but the rapture itself. So let me lay out the scenario here for you from a scriptural standpoint now. I've given you all the stuff from the world and the threats and the some of the history on behind it and the potential for calamity that lays right at our doorstep. But let me read this, and this is what Jesus said here in Luke chapter 17. When he was asked about the last days, Jesus had this to say. And as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise, as it was also in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even so will it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Now, this cannot be talking about the second coming because all of those things that Jesus just describes, that is not going to be happening in any measurable kind of way or any kind of normal way at the end of the second coming. I mean, you're talking about the world will have gone through the seven seal judgments, the seven trumpet judgments, and now a number of the bowl judgments. And I mean, when your skin is rotting off and you've got these painful boils on your skin wherever you had the mark of the beast and all that, you're not thinking about buying and selling and getting married and eating and like that's not normal, you know, and there not being any water or the heat, the oppressive heat or you know the supernatural darkness. Like the last thing people are going to be thinking about is, oh, it's a great time to get married. No, this is talking about the way the world is right now, leading up to the time of the rapture of the church. And I know that if you talk to J.B. Hickson or you talk to Lee Brainerd or some other folks, they have different ideas about what this means. I'm just looking at it from just a very common man person, whatever perspective. I'm just looking at it and I'm just taking it for what it says. And for what I take away from this is that there's a sense of normalcy, that the world is normal all the way up until that point when boom, the hammer falls, right? And judgment is poured out upon the earth. Until the day Noah entered the ark. But on that day that Lot went out of Sodom. So both of those, it was everything was normal right up until that point, and boom. And if it were just this one passage, it would be hard to defend. But when I go down to what Paul would write later on, it seems to echo the same thing. Here he writes in 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 1 through 4, he says, But concerning the times and seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. Notice he says, For when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them. So if they're saying peace and safety, I think they're not clamoring for it. I think they're saying, "Hey, we finally got it. We've achieved this. We've arrived here." And then sudden destruction. There's a contrasting here. There's a contradistinction between the moment when they're proclaiming peace and safety, and then sudden destruction. There's this huge shift in the outcome for them at this point. So I think the world will have come to some kind of point where we feel like peace is achievable. And I think we're seeing that groundwork for that being laid up right now. I think what's going to take place is Israel's going to finish doing what they need to do around their borders, all the way down with the US with regard to the Houthis, and probably taking out Iran's nuclear facilities, as well as, finally destroying or getting rid of Hezbollah, getting rid of Hamas, annexing the Judea Samaria region and making that all Israel. And then they're going to feel like, man, we finally got it. We've neutralized all the major threats in our purview. And then the rapture happens. And then boom, the United States is no longer there to protect or to have the back of Israel. Israel's enemies, like vultures, are like swirling around in the sky. They're like, ooh, now is the time. So they begin to amass and they begin to do these digital um, call outs around the world for all the faithful Muslims to come march on Jerusalem and finally help liberate Jerusalem, because now the big Satan is out of the picture. And now Israel's truly going to be alone. And there will be a few that protest in support of Israel, but that's all that is empty protest. Like, hey, why are you doing this? And, I'm not going to go into the specifics of whether Gog is Vladimir Putin or not. I have no idea, but I think there will be plenty of ethnic Russians and Chechens and Dagestanis and others that come down in droves in this massive storm that covers everything. So many people are going to march against Israel that they're going to think that this is the second coming. Not the second coming. This is like their Armageddon. This is the final last days. And then God supernaturally destroys all their enemies right there. And then at the end of that, there's some guy that appears out of nowhere that appears to be some type of a deal maker or whatever he is. And maybe he's able to fight off the last vestiges of this army or whatever the case is. I don't know. But he's seen as some great peacemaker. And that's when they make this deal, this covenant deal with the Antichrist. And that's what starts the clock ticking. But while all of that stuff's going on, the United States is still over here crumbling and falling apart. You got cities rioting and burning it down. You've got politicians hiding out in Camp David and other secured locations trying to get a game plan together. All the intel agency buddies, all the special forces, and everybody's trying to just survive at this point in the United States. And then something will arise out of the United States. It's not going to be the United States anymore, but some government will come up out of that crumbling phoenix. That phoenix. Something will arise out of there. And I think that's what could possibly become Mystery Babylon. It could just be part of one of the 10 kings. I really don't know. But it will have a role to play, but not as the United States of America. That the days of us being governed by a constitution and all that kind of stuff, those days will be over with. This will be a new time. Yes. Unparalleled threats, millions and tens of millions of people just curiously disappearing mysteriously disappearing from the earth. It will be unlike a time anybody's ever known in even recent history, going all the way back to the time of the Romans and before. There's not a time we can really parallel to this because of how supernatural things will become. And that appearance of the supernatural will then expedite the launching of questionable technology, questionable software, questionable artificial intelligence, and you're going to have things skyrocketing in so many different directions. It's gonna be pretty chaotic, I think, for a while until the B system clamps everything down. But yeah, I see that essentially as the event, the rapture being the event that kicks everything off. And I've read enough of intel briefs and analysis from the United nations, from the World Economic Forum, from the United States, the National Security Council. They do their 5-year analysis. I mean, I've read just a number of them over the years. Something I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. I don't know, but none of them ever talk about the rapture. I mean, it's just not something that they ever see as a threat of happening. And I'm talking like if there's even any mention of the word rapture in any of those documents, and we're talking tens of thousands of documents, it's only in relation to that it's a belief that certain fringe elements within Christianity hold to. It's not something that they take seriously. It's just something they use as a form of derision. So it is the perfect black swan event. It's the perfect 0 day event because 99.9% of the world's leaders don't even believe it's a real thing. I think probably the highest level official that I could think of that probably believes the rapture is a true thing, like a real thing, would maybe like Mike Huckabee. I don't know anybody beyond him, above him, that thinks in those terms or has even is familiar with the concept of it. So, anyways, I think that's it. A couple of things that came out of this article that I had not really considered before was that I think, we talk about all of the different technological advancements and how that has tie-ins with the mark of the beast, or it has tie-ins with um, um, global currency or global religion or whatever. We have roundtables and we talk about technological advancements and all these different fields and things like that. And it, we have enough of foresight to know that we're watching the system being built right now. It's like, imagine living in a small village, and your whole land got conquered by another nation, and you're just some small village, and every day you start seeing the guards come out and they begin to start building a wall. And at first you're thinking, why are they build? That's nice. Why would they build a wall for us? And then you realize they're not building a wall for us. They're building a prison to keep us in here. And we're seeing them build this wall around us. And so that's what's happening right now with the world. In both Republican and Democrat Party, both parties have pushed agendas that have enabled this, going forward. And I mean, it's 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 as inescapable as World War I was as inescapable. It's just destined to happen, and this is going to happen. We're watching it being built. But one of the things that I thought about, what if, because we know Satan believes that the rapture is real. We know that he knows it's real. And he's probably got some top officials, both human and angel, that also probably realize that it's coming. And they're trying to, I'm thinking maybe there's some type of technological tripwire that they're going to use so that when it happens, that's exactly the same moment they flip the switch on this and they flip everybody over to whatever this new system is going to be. And so anything that's online is going to be lost. And they can immediately get control of the internet very quickly if they switch everybody over to this new system. And maybe it's 100% Starlink. I have no idea what the new system is going to be, but whatever it is, they can't tolerate the internet as it is right now. They have the dark net. They have a lot of places on the internet where people can meet and congregate and talk and whatever. They don't want any of that subversiveness. Like they're going to root that out 100%. So they have got to get everybody off this present system, internet system, and get us onto some new system, or make it so that you cannot log in without some new thing added to your phone or laptop or whatever. And then that thing monitors everything you say and do. So they're gonna figure this out. But what I was thinking of is that maybe the rapture is something that they use that Satan uses to piggyback bringing in this new system. And then part of why we see the red horse riding out there in the second seal judgment is a lot of the countries are pushing back on that. They don't want to get on board with whatever the system is, but now they're warring against the Antichrist in this final piece, the final version of it. So it's going to be just they're going to lose. And at the end of that, he's conquered all these nations. Everybody's like, man, and nobody can stand against this guy. So that's one thing is that I think that there may be some type of built-in tripwire that's not tied to anything uh, natural, but it's going to be tied specifically to the rapture. I don't know how that works or what that looks like or anything like that right now, but it's something I'll continue to develop, like how they could, how could the world, how could the system know that millions of people, billions of people all of a sudden disappeared? And if for example, in the rapture event itself, let's say that out of the rapture of the state of California, let's just say that there is, and I'm just completely pulling this number out of thin air. I don't even know. Let's just say that there's 5 million Christians. And out of those 5 million Christians, a percentage of them or some number of them, maybe 100, have medical devices implanted inside their bodies, cochlear implants or heart monitor, or whatever. And then those things are tied to the system. And they automatically know that, hey, this person is no longer here. It's no longer working. I'm not attached to anything, you know? And it hits the ground. They may know that, but there's got to be some way that they've got to, if Satan knows that this is a real thing, the rapture is real, then he's going to be trying to work in some type of surveillance system that is can monitor that in real time. You know what I mean? Like he's going to want to know the sec. He's not going to want to waste a single second, um, because the rapture is going to be chaotic enough to the world system. He's going to try and save every second he can and push that towards winning, towards achieving his agenda. So, all right. So let me go to some Q&A. Let's see here. I want to go back and look at some of the ones from the other night that I didn't answer. At least a couple of them. Okay, that was the 12th. What's today? The 14th? Okay, this was from Gerard. Question: Isn't Ethiopia mentioned with Iran, Russia, Turkey that come up against Israel? And why is it why haven't we heard much about Ethiopia? Well, the nations that are mentioned there is in Africa are Libya, which is Put, and I guess it would be Ethiopia. It's named as such, but Ethiopia back then was much bigger than it's much more expansive than the state is today. And I think a lot of that would include a lot of Congo, or not Congo, Sudan, and then Somalia and Eritrea, uh, or Eritrea, however you say it. All of that area would be considered Ethiopia. So that has a huge Muslim population in it right now. So why haven't we heard much about them? Couldn't tell you. I looked up the other day just because I was curious. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, I think it's called GERD, but it's basically the headwaters for the Nile. And they were trying to, I think they were building a dam. I don't know if they actually built it or not, but the Egyptians were incredibly upset about that because now Ethiopia can control the flow of water to Egypt. And, obviously the Nile is the lifeblood of Egypt. So another nation controlling the headwaters is a very big threat to them. So that other than that, and they've been putting forces in the Sinai, which is a violation of the security peace treaty they had from 67. I don't know. why we haven't heard as much as we have from them, but they are part of the Gog Magog coalition that gets wiped out. So um, again, I'm a big believer that at the end of Gog and Magog, Islam as a religion is done. I mean, it's just done. It's going to be of no more effect than its Zoroastrianism is today. So, and if you don't know what that is, it's probably it's evidence of what I just said. Okay, fifth. Okay, this is from I Need Jesus. Question: Since man was made to rule on earth, not in heaven, do you think the thrones of the elders in Revelation 4 belong to a divine council members in the thrones in Daniel 7:9? Um, well, in Daniel 7:9, if I'm not mistaken, let's see if I'm thinking correctly here. And I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated, and his garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, and its wheels a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. A thousand thousands ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him, and the court was seated, and the books were opened. And then it goes on here. Da, 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 da. Yeah, we don't see anybody mentioned sitting in the thrones there, whereas in Revelation we do see them mentioned as sitting in the thrones. And so the fact that they're not mentioned in Daniel, to me, indicates that this is going to be a picture of the church because they're not known in the Old Testament, and that was still a mystery to them. But now they're revealed in the New Testament. And who do I think the 24 elders are? No idea. It could be just a rotating lineup of believers from every age. I mean, I really don't know. Uh, it maybe it has something to do with our spiritual, family trees. Person that led me to the Lord, and the person that led that person to the Lord, and on and on and on and on and on, all the way back to the first apostles. Maybe it's that. Maybe it has something to do with that. I don't know. I need you to send. Okay, let's see. I read that one already. It's the same one. From Sammy Thompson, do you think the Apophis is the wormwood star from Revelation 2029? You know what? If, I mean, obviously, if the rapture happens anytime, let's say between now and 2026, I mean, that's certainly a possibility. I think we're not going to be here to find out either way. So, um, I don't know. I think Tom Horn has a good theory on it. So I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but I think if we're correct on our understanding of the timing and stuff, then it makes for a perfect candidate for Apophis. Okay, James Wells question, and I will break the bow of Elam, alias Iran. Pete, do you think that's what we could be seeing if Iran doesn't deconstruct their nuclear program? Yeah, I think that's exactly what this is. And I think, I don't know, maybe Chuck Missler or Bill Salas, one of those guys were the first to really kind of to focus in on this. Bill Salas for sure, but I think maybe uh I'm drawing a blank here on Chuck Missler and guys before him. Anyways, but yeah, I think that's what that is. Richard Browder question: How do you think the U.S. gets knocked out and not a factor during the tribulation? What do you think happens to America? Well, I think the rapture is what happens. And just like the United States was a mystery in terms of our formation, our creation as a nation, the type of government we have, the pro Judeo Christian values we've tried to emulate for the last 200 plus years. All of that stuff, I think, just like we are this mystery amongst the nations that, we shouldn't really exist the way that we do because it's never worked anywhere before. But we had just the right people at the right time, the right place. that wrote the right documents, that had the right strength to the documents, that created the perfect balance of powers and yada yada yada, representative government, all of that, God's favor, allowed for this nation to exist. And when you hear Rush Limbaugh and those folks that talked about American exceptionalism, it's not that we think we're exceptional people or that we're better than anybody else. It's just that what America represents was an exception to the norm. I mean, no other country's ever existed like this. And for all of our warts and our sins and our flaws, I think America has done a tremendous amount of good in the world. And that's why, there's not anything wrong with having pride in your nation because this nation has done amazing things. And this nation has done a lot of terrible things too, don't get me wrong. Every nation has. So, but I think the rapture is what takes us out. And to be fair, if our understanding of time is correct, should any of those things I mentioned in the article, the EMP, the cyber attack, financial attack, sleeper cells, all of that stuff, I think if that were going to have happened, it would have already happened many years ago. And I think the fact that it hasn't happened and that it very easily could have happened and it's still not happened is because God has got a specific time plan and something is in place right now. Things are in motion, and our collapse presents the perfect global crisis to finally push everybody over the edge and go to one system. And I can't think of a better thing than the rapture being that that instrument of chaos, the monkey wrench, the divine monkey wrench that gets thrown in, right? Okay, Michelle S. Do you think that a cyber attack or collapse will happen after the rapture to add to the chaos? I absolutely think that it's a possibility that while the rapture is happening, and there's that small window of time when things are very, very chaotic. I don't know that necessarily other nations necessarily would attack us. Maybe China, and maybe in conjunction with Russia or some other groups, but there's definitely many, many bad actors out there that would take advantage of the chaos. Terrorist groups, narco terrorist groups, political terrorist groups. I mean, religious terrorists. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of people that would jump at the opportunity to kick us while we're down. And from Becky, are we in the calm before the storm? To me, it feels very heavy right now. Yeah, I do think we're in the calm before the storm. And if it's heavy now, imagine how heavy it will be. I mean, 1 second after the rapture. But it is a sense of normalcy right now, you know? And I know that, you know, from our perspective, we don't look at things necessarily as normal in terms of, you know, COVID in 2020 or uh, the Ukraine war or the BLM or any of these other things that have happened here in the elections and Butler, Pennsylvania, all of that stuff, all the crazy stuff that's just happened. Because we're in it, we're right in it, and so it's very hard for us to be unbiased because we're living through this. But if you were to fast forward 80, 90, 100 years and you're looking back at this time, most of that stuff you would not see. You would not see and just like when we talk to people that grew up in the 30s, the 20s and the 30s during the Depression era, I mean, if you ever sit with them and watch a movie during about that time period, and they're like, "Yeah, that's not really how it happened," But you know what I mean. Like if I watch a war movie about Iraq or Afghanistan, I'm like, or even just the military in general, I'm like, yeah, that's not really true. That's not really how it happens. Especially war movies where dudes all have like long hair and like they don't have they don't have high and tights or anything like that. Like that would never, especially in the army. Okay, but yeah, and I think that's my approaching midnight series is really talking about the heaviness and not again, not from heavy theology, but just, everyday life, the family, everybody that I know has had some type of crisis, massive crisis in their life, whether it's in their marriage or whether it's with a child or a sibling, a parent, every imaginable problem you can think of, I've heard, and it seems like it's impacting very heavily upon the watching community of Christians. I'm not going to say Christians in general, but the Christians that are watching, man, all of us have got like this major problems going on in our lives, and I don't, and I got to think that this is just part and parcel of the spiritual attacks that are going on 24/7 against us, and so I think for me, like Saturday night, it's just cathartic. It's just talking about these issues and having a community that we can kind of share and wrap arms together and kind of carry each other's burdens, as it were. I don't promise. I mean, I'm not going to offer you guys any type of financial knowledge or medical knowledge or anything like that. I am not equipped to do that. I just think if we talk about it and we come together as a community, and I think there's we don't feel so isolated or alone. You know what I mean? Like, we have each other. Um, and for right now, it's online, but soon enough, it'll be together in person. But okay, here's some more questions here. Thank you, Catalin. Squid the Hippo, do you think our souls or the Holy Spirit living in us will sense the rapture is about to happen moments before it does? I think we will. I think kind of collectively we will. I don't know how to explain it other than that. I think I think for that's part of the blessing for those that are watching is that we may see something that is like, you know, a red star cluster for us, for our community, but for like everybody else, they're like, whatever. But for us, we're pinging off the walls, and I think it'll be close to that. Just like in when Jesus first came, when his first advent, there was a star of Bethlehem, and if you didn't know what that star was, it would just be another star. It would just be, oh, it's interesting. It's stars right there. It's close. It seems like it's moving a little bit, but they wouldn't know what it meant, right? It took the wise men to know what it meant, and they for them it was very exciting because they understood what it meant. They understood what the meaning was behind that star. So it may be like that for us, where we see something happen and it's like, oh, and our we go to, I forget what Chooch calls it, rapcon 5 or whatever the highest level of rapture readiness is. We go to that level, rapcon 5 or something, and that's when I think if we see something, but it may all catch us by surprise too. You never know. uh from Hammer Time, do you think everyone will hear the trumpet and the angels and shout and see us go, or will only believers see and hear what's happening? I'm of the mind that only the believers will see and hear it happening. Now, there's going to be a lot of some very, very, very surprised Christians. I can tell you that much. So they may be very surprised, like, "What? What is that?" Did I remember I told you that story about in the army back at Fort Bliss years and years ago? I was walking into the little shopette, and after it was after work, and I was going in to get a drink or whatever, and I had parked underneath the light posts, for the parking lot, and there was a speaker attached to it. I had no idea the speaker was there, but I'm walking in, and then and it's right at like in different military bases, they do it at different times. Sometimes it's right at 5 o'clock. Sometimes it's at 5:30. And I think this was at 5:30. But man, I hear this horn go off, and it's right above me, like it's coming from the sky. And in like a split second, I thought it was the rapture, and I got excited, and then I realized it was just revelry. I was like, "Oh, not revelry." Yeah, I guess it is revelry, or whatever the afternoon retreat uh, is. So, anyways, that was funny. I've never been that disappointed in my life. When I realized just for like that split second, I thought it was the rapture, and then it was like, "Oh man, that's just retreat." Oh man, I was pretty bummed about that one. But yeah, I don't know. I think we kind of will. It'd be cool if we did. I mean, and I've said this before too. I feel like we're kind of in an alternate reality right now. I mean, by all measures, Kamala Harris should have won. I mean, by all measures, Hillary Clinton should have won 2 terms, and we would have had some kind of milquetoast Republican run in 2024. He would have lost, and then we would have been what at 12 years into this Democrat dystopic nightmare. The U.S. would probably look very much like the UK right now. We couldn't even have this conversation, without fear of going to jail or something. Like I feel like that's the reality we were meant to have, and by God's grace, things turned out the way they did. Um, I don't know. It feels so bizarre with Trump in office. Like I'm glad he's there. I know he's not perfect. I know he makes a ton of mistakes. I know all the detractions, but can you imagine if we had lived through 8 years of Hillary Clinton and then 4 years of Biden and then another 4 years of like it would be nightmarish. Oh my gosh. I can't even fathom that's what I feel like the world should be like right now. But God had other plans. He's only going to do this once, right? He's only going to do this whole human experience one time. And it reminds me of this is going to be really stupid. It reminds me of Wayne's World. I think it was Wayne's World. It came out in the 90s, I think it was. There's Wayne's World with these two characters from Saturday Night Live. They had their own movie spin-off, a couple movies. And they pull up into a gas station and they're trying to race to get somewhere to stop a wedding. And um, they stop at this gas station. And there's this old man, and it's just part of the movie, right? He's like, "Yeah, that place is let's see, you go down the road about 3 miles and you go da da da," and he just kind of explains. And then Mike Myers, who is like the main character in this, I think he's Wayne. I can't remember the exacts on that, but he- he's like, "Wait a minute, I know this is like he breaks the fourth wall. He's looking into the camera. He's like, I know that this is just a comedy movie, blah blah blah, but can we get a better actor to play this part?" And then they trade that they in the middle of the movie while they're filming it, they take that guy out. Somebody from HR comes and shuffles him off, and then they bring in Charlton Heston, and then Charlton Heston gives this like amazing like monologue, and shows him where everything is. And that's what I feel like we're in that kind of like we had the boring no name actor there before. Now we've got Charlton Heston, and it's just like that much better. So, anyways, okay. Well, I think that was it. I think that was the last question. I think I got everybody. Well, hey, I don't have anything in the cooker myself in terms of conferences or anything. I'm not speaking anything until like September, October timeframe, but I am going to go up to Idaho and I'm thinking June. I don't know when in June, but if there are people in June in Idaho in that area, northern Idaho, Spokane area. If you guys are interested in meeting up at some point, maybe get coffee someplace, we can all kind of just do kind of a group hangout. Let me know. Message me, or not message, email me on Yahoo on my website, email rev underscore 310. And just let me know. I know a few people up there already. But if you guys are interested in just kind of meeting up together and having some coffee or a little Bible study or whatever, I don't, 5, 10 people, whatever it is. I mean, we could definitely do that, but it'll be in June and it'll be up in Idaho, probably Sandpoint, Idaho area. So kind of northern Idaho. So if you're up there, I know you guys don't get a lot of love in terms of prophecy conferences. So I am not trying to be that substitute, but I will definitely meet and greet with people and hang out and just talk or whatever. Okay. It's 10:20 now. I've been on for what, an hour and 20 minutes. I'm still trying to get used to this new setup here. Um, I just saw a question here. Abel asked question, what do you think of all these reported plane helicopter crashes as a pilot? Yeah, I've already given my analysis from the crash in September with the airliner and the helicopter. Then we had the one that was immediately after that. It was like a week later, was that medical plane that was taken off with about 7 or 8 people on board, and they nosedived into I I can't remember the state it was in, Illinois, Ohio, somewhere, maybe Ohio or Pennsylvania. I'm just throwing out states here now. I have no idea. And then we did the plane in that crashed in Alaska, the tour plane. We had the helicopter that just crashed here recently in New York that killed a family. Um, and that was weird. Because you could see the rotor system completely separated from the helicopter. 'Cause when I first saw the footage, I just saw the plane falling, the helicopter falling. And generally, if you're in a helicopter and you're the greasy side down, if you're facing the normal way down, your rotor system, you can use your rotor system, the air going through it, to kind of cushion your uh, your fall down. In fact, that's one of the main um, uh, one of your main procedures you do is an auto rotation. So basically, you kill all the power to the rotor system, and now the rotor system is kind of free flow, but it's already flowing in that one direction. And now it's just getting all that air that's coming up through that, and you can use the pitch on the blades to kind of cushion and slow yourself down as you're going down. So I've auto rotated, I don't know, dozens of times in helicopters, so I know that you can do it. But to see the rotor system completely separated from the helicopter itself, that almost looks like sabotage. I hate to say that, but I just don't even know how you that even happens. I mean, because the minute you start, he was flying. From my understanding, it looked like a Bell Jet Ranger, which I've got. Uh, I don't know, probably 150 hours in a Bell Jet Ranger. But yeah, the it seems like, well, let me back up. There's no way that that helicopter could have gone from being parked somewhere and everybody getting on board, and then they take off. They start it up and take off. If that rotor system, the masthead there, was as loose or messed up as it was. So it would have had to either been hanging, something had some nut or bolt in there had to be hanging by a thread. And when they get up to altitude and they're flying, and maybe he's trying to avoid a bird or whatever, it was just enough pressure to break it off. Or somebody had sabotaged that plane and giving who was on board that plane, the Siemens guy. If he were a nobody, he was just like a random tourist. Like, I would say, yeah, that was just terribly bad luck and terrible maintenance, and somebody should have caught that, and so that tour company is out of business because they're gonna get sued into oblivion. But the fact that he is somebody of note, and the way it happened like that, that just seems so bizarre to me. Uh, yeah. Now, as for all the other planes and stuff, I mean, they're all I mean, there's tens of thousands of flights every single day, so the fact that, you know, there are any days where we don't have crashes, those are kind of miracles in and of themselves. Kinda like that Delta plane that flipped upside down, but nobody was injured. I mean, that was that kind of miracle. I mean, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of flights every single day, and the reason they catch the news is because they're usually when they don't, it's safer to fly than it is to drive, but when a crash does happen, it's so spectacular that it can't help but make the news, you know? It's gonna make the news. Alright. Alrighty, I think that's it. Thank you, moderators, tonight for your help. Um, yeah, again, if you're gonna be in the, Spokane, Sandpoint area in June, let me know. We'll try to meet up there, do something. But, alright, I think that's it. I got everybody else's questions. The helicopter also said it had to land to get fuel. Doesn't make sense with it just take. Well, there was an Apache helicopter in an AH-64 that was flying in Fort Campbell a few years ago. I think it's like 2 years ago now. And the rotor system, there was a problem with the rotor system, and it basically disintegrated. What they were up hovering somewhere, doing operations or whatever, and their rotor system just disintegrated. So there was something inside of the mast, a ball bearing that was out of place or whatever. But I mean, and that's incredibly rare. I mean, that it just has to be like the perfect storm of multiple parts failing at the same time. It just seems so unlikely. And the same thing with the rotor head, the masthead just completely coming off and separating from the. I have a hard time seeing that. Uh, it looks like again, like it was just something was just barely holding it together, like bubblegum and Wishes was holding it together, or it was sabotage. And again, if it were a nobody passenger, yeah, just terrible luck, a terrible turn of events. But because he's of somebody of note, I tend to think the latter for whatever reason. Okay. Well, thank you guys. God bless you. And if you haven't checked out the article, check out the article. I've also put a bunch of free stories on my website. If you have a laptop, go on the top of the website to the tabs and look for books. And then in the book section, there's the books you can order from Amazon or whatever. But there's also a bunch of free short stories that I've done up there. And you just click on the free short stories, and they're all there, and they're all in PDF. So you can just open them up, you can save them to your laptop, whatever. So you can print them out, use them for bird liner for your cages, for your bird cages. But anyways, they're just short stories. So uh, I get bored, I start writing stuff, and that's what comes out. All right, well, take care, guys. God bless you, and I will see you. I honestly don't know. I don't think I have any interviews this week. I think my next thing would be Saturday night to the approaching midnight. Again, we'll talk about probably talking about relationships, marriages, families, parents, kids, all that. If you have a good story about marriages being reconciled, children being reconciled, parents being reconciled, um, basically we're looking at relationships in the last days. What does that look like? How do we deal with the common problems that we all have? On and on. So, anyways, that's all I have for tonight. Thank you guys. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon.